November 9th, 2025. This is my story. Being cool in the game. I grew up out west St. Louis, Missouri, in the heart of the streets. The 1970s and 80s crack era was just about ending, and gang banging was raising crime rates over St. Louis. Killing over colors like red and blue caused chaos, but it was all a game. Keeping it gangster, wearing neighborhood colors, no snitching the cops was a part of gang rules, and being an outlaw made you cool in the game. I overcame the war against gang banging. Though I joined the gang, I managed to graduate from school. Going to school is where I got active, known as Crippin'. Blue was my favorite color. Drugs were not cool at the young age, but unfortunately became a part of the gang banging activity, smoking weed and pills. Under the influence of drugs and gangs, I committed senseless, random, violent acts. It started from school fights to shootings known as drive-bys after school. Upon my last year of high school, I began to change my mind. In this world, jail and death was the only way out of the game. I wanted more out of life. I wanted to be a doctor and help people, be there for my mother instead of die in the streets. I had a dream of being a rapper, not a drug dealer. I loved to go to school and learn, but being cool in the game often got in the way of my education. I messed up my perfect attendance. Fights led to juvenile probation and assault and rival gang members. It was kill or be killed. Retaliation was a must. Considering myself a rider, drive-by killings was some messed up things I've done. Deep inside my mind, I had other plans to make it out the gang lifestyle. I made a decision to live above the influence of drugs, but I noticed drugs had a stronger influence on me worse than gang banging. I graduated from high school, going to college, pursuing my dreams in the medical field, and there's where I realized my worst dream coming true. I was addicted to drugs. I had a drug problem without a clue of how to cope. My life was going down the drain. I dropped out of college and with straight A's. I was a dean student in college, never making honor roll in public schools. I was proud of myself, so I figured it was the perfect time to stop drugging. And this is where my addiction conquered me. I was sick in class. My grades began to drop. I couldn't focus on education. My game was under attack. My friends slash gang members were being killed. I struggled hard to cope until I asked myself, do I want to go to school or be in the streets? Dope sick and grieving from gang violence, I chose the streets. Remembering it like yesterday, I put my books aside, picked up my Smith & Wesson 40, called a pill man, and hit the streets ready to die for the cause of being cool in the game. Without a job, robbery became my hustle to support my addiction. I would rob everybody to get high and do a drive-by. And to this day, November 9th, 2010, I caught my first degree robbery and was sentenced to 10 years in prison upon my release in 2020. I came home addicted to fentanyl and mad at the world, ready for retaliation for the loss I took in the game while in prison. Eventually, I got caught with a gun and drugs. I learned a lot during incarceration. I turned 21 years old my first birthday in jail. By the age of 23, I lost my truest gang member, my blood brother, my mama's son, Lil Funk, D'Angelo, my little brother. Unable to retaliate, I used learning to cope. Unwilling to learn from negative influence on the prison yard and not wanting to go to church but seeking God's guidance, I went to the Moorish Science Temple of America. There's where I learned the truth, and God was the truth. My divine creed, God of my ancestors, Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, I became closer to God as I studied myself on a spiritual journey. I stopped being active as a Crip. I proclaimed my nationality in the state prison, becoming an active Moor, pinpointing my place in this world not as African American but as Moorish American, descendant of Moroccans born in America. I had to learn how to love instead of hate to become closer with my higher power. I started to love my enemies who were rival gang members who came from the same St. Louis streets and city schools facing the same struggles to maintain their war against drugs and the street gang lifestyle. I took classes like ICVC, Impact of Crime on Victims, and MAD, Mothers Against Drunk Drivers class to learn and understand how the impact on crime impacted us all as victims. For example, a drug dealer not only breaks the law, but causes a person to get high. The government sells alcohol, causes a person to get drunk, and this person, under the influence, go back, kill the dealer, go on a run from the law, high speeding through the city of St. Louis, can crash a car into a bus of elementary students, injure everybody, jump out and run, and get killed by the police. That one drug sale impacted us all at a national level, injuring the entire human race of God's children. I learned the law in state prison, how to file motions. I took NA and AA classes, learned a little about addiction and relapse. I think the most important thing I learned was my family history and divine creed and the filing of motions. Because upon my release from prison, School of the Hard Knocks, MST of A, School of High Learning, I still struggle with use of drugs, and not gang but gun violence. It led to me encountering the feds. I got caught up in a federal investigation. Conscious of my early lessons in life, I didn't cooperate with their investigation, and eventually was set up by snitches, framed by federal agents, government officials, and sent to jail 7 months after being released from state prison. The day I was framed and almost got killed by police doing a high speed, leaving the liquor store, changed my life. I survived the hit by the feds, and for staying true to the game, God did take my soul. He sent me another one because my good deeds outweigh my bad deeds. I sat back in my new jail cell thinking about the story of my life, reevaluating the things I learned coming up in St. Louis public schools, the streets, and the Missouri State Department of Corrections, and all the moves I had to get here in federal court. Things started making sense. I knew that I was innocent, but I still was trapped inside the system. I said to myself, ain't no way. I know a little about the law, and I ain't tripping. I have been kidnapped by a domestic government. The government has been my enemy all this time. They've been making up statutes so we'll break them, conscious or unconsciously, to put us in jail, which is legal slavery. They got 98% of my state in chains, which is my family, my brothers and sisters, the descendants of Abraham, one of the lost tribes of Israel. Then it really dawned on me. This is a war going on in my city, a war on drugs, a war against crime, and everybody seemed to be sleeping / guilty but me. At that moment, I felt so grateful that I had paid attention to what I was taught. I learned my roots. I didn't accept bribes. I pledged my allegiance to the flag. I was a young soldier all this time, and I had one last move, and I made it. I knew all about my family history. Remembering the pen was mightier than a sword, I wrote my honorable judge and told her all about my story and how I was kidnapped off the streets, and also said that I knew the truth about my family history, nationality, birthrights, and divine creed, tracing my bloodline back to the tribe of David, back to Abraham, back to Terah, Noah, Seth, Adam, back to God, and in turn made a valid claim on the throne of my grandfather, King David, because of my birthright. And I'm now the king of my city, St. Louis, Missouri. I was born a king, national descendant from Bethlehem, Judea, and the royal house of David and the land of Moab, Hebrews from the Chaldean hills. Born a king in the United States of America, Eastern District of St. Louis, Missouri on April 26, 1990. What have I learned? I learned the game of life. I locked the game down, became who I was born to be, and found my way back home to heaven, to be with my holy and royal family. I really found the kingdom of heaven, and the rest is going to be added to me.